Just under 12 hours before I'm filming this, I stepped off of the Jacksonville Symphony stage after performing Dvořák's New World Symphony. And it got me thinking, given how unbelievably popular this piece is among students and professionals alike, it's hard to believe that I haven't done a video with tips and tricks to make your performance of it a success. That changes now. Welcome to Sectionals. First off, if you're new here, welcome. I'm Cello Ben, and I'm a professional orchestral musician. For the past 3 seasons, I've been very privileged to serve as Associate Principal Cello of the Jacksonville Symphony. And before that, I was a fellow with the New World Symphony. The orchestra, not the piece. Now, why am I telling you this? Because I want to let you know that I've been around the block, especially when it comes to Dvořák 9, and I've amassed what I believe to be some helpful nuggets of advice that I want to pass on to you today. In this video, my goal is to give you everything that you need to demystify the inner workings of this great symphony, based upon my experience playing it many, many times. Now, while I will inevitably miss something that somebody's struggling with, the good news is that there's a comments section right below, and I'm here to answer your questions, so ask away. Before we get into things, just a quick disclaimer, I am a secondary resource. That is, I'm not here to step on the toes of anybody that you're working with IRL. Teachers, conductors, section leaders, they all outrank me. So, for example, if I say that I recommend doing something on the D string, but Maestro asks for it on the A string, listen to them, not me. All right, disclaimer out of the way, let's get into the piece. So, Dvořák 9, plenty of interesting history to it. I'm not going to really go into that today because I'm not a music historian. I'll leave that to them. But I will say, even though Dvořák was from the modern-day Czech Republic, this piece was composed right here where I am in the States. And to me, it does have that sort of abstractly open and generous character to it that you might find later in the music of somebody like Copland. And let's keep that spirit of openness and generosity alive as we work through this when it's applicable to the piece. So, very beginning. Sometimes this will be started on the A string, sometimes on the D. So if you started on the D, first of all, make sure you're stabilizing it up here with your thumb, and I would start with 3-1. And then a shift to 3. Now, let's talk a little bit about rhythm and counting. I remember the very first time I played any of this piece was at a summer festival when I was 13. And I couldn't quite grasp this opening rhythm. I was just thinking, ba-dee-dee-dee-dee-dee-dee-doo, which is not what it is. So make sure that you're feeling that second beat and then coming off of it. 2. Now, speaking of rhythm and counting, let's go forward to here. This is coming after a spot that I don't count. It's a little bit nebulous and it can be confusing sometimes if you're just looking up. So study the score and get to know how this area goes so that then you and the other strings can just confidently come in when it's time based on your knowledge of the piece, not trying to suss out exactly where you are in a long rest. It's a little bit confusingly written, as things tend to be when they're in 4/8 and sort of subdivided into very small note values. But pick up, ba-ba-bum, 2, 3, 4, ba-ba-bum, and then we do that again, and then that next bar, bum-ba-dum, ba-ba-bum, ba-ba-ba, and then it gets a little more straightforward after that. Let's take a look here now. For the stroke here, I think towards the upper half is better, even for when you get to the forte. And the reason is because I think this should be very sort of gluey and melodic, and the short note values sort of trick our brain into thinking, you know, oh, thinking that we might want that. But in reality, we want something much smoother. Ba-bum, ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba. Now these chords will likely be done unison But they're so short, so how do we deal with that? Well, the solution is go towards the fingerboard. Usually you don't think about playing up near the fingerboard when you're forte, but in the case of a chord that you want to avoid rolling, you get a flatter surface up here, and that'll make your job much easier. So if you're down here too close to the bridge, you're going to hear that breaking. But if you're up here, you can just wha. All right, now, once we finish up the introduction, we get towards this allegro molto, we need to be very careful because we're going to see a big downbeat from the conductor and we're going to be tempted to start plucking. But make sure that you wait for a violin tremolo first. That's in the bar right before the allegro molto. It's a trap that I've fallen into in the past. I don't want you to fall into it too. Now, I think the exposition works really well when started in third position. Because then here you can just cross. And then replace to first position. And then make sure, or whatever bowing you're doing, make sure this fortissimo is sudden and that there's not a crescendo to it. All right, now just a little trick after figure 3 with these pizzas. Once you get to the 8th bar of them, switch to left hand. Otherwise, it can be dicey whether or not you can get to that first arco note in time. Now, speaking of that, in general, in orchestral playing, we want to be from the string. That is, we want to be set on the string ready to go so that if we need to come in some place, we reduce the number of variables that could negatively impact the togetherness of the ensemble. So, for example, here would be much better instead of, because there's this extra air time that we don't necessarily know exactly what's going to happen. And the way we do that is with that left hand pits. So, pits set. Now, one thing you may have noticed here in the exposition is these tremolos. Sorry, I circled one bar too early, but you get the picture. One sort of thing that you'll find in this piece is that there are a lot of these kinds of markings, and it's important to suss out which ones are tremolos and which ones are not. Some are sort of generally done one way, but other times there will be differences in interpretations between, conductors, orchestras, whatever. So these are important questions to ask to figure out what's tremolo and what's measured. These I can almost guarantee will be tremolo. However, the reason that I bring this up now is because when we get here to figure 4, these will almost certainly be 16ths. And I think shaggy and on the string is good here. Now looking just a little bit forward to the third line you see here. One little trick to sort of make this line pop is to start on the D string. And then switch the B over to the A string. All right, next up, development. So once you've taken the repeat and are at the second ending, the main thing that I want to point out is these 16ths here. These can easily sound muddy. And the reasons for that are severalfold. Number one, if there's not enough finger articulation. Number two, if you're too far away from the bridge. And number three, if you're using too much bow. So on the closer side towards the bridge, good finger articulation and very little bow. You'll still get plenty of sound. But this will help make the notes sound distinct. Now right after that, in this triple P passage, you may have the opportunity, based on your situation, to lift the bow there a little bit at the end before the pits, and that's what we had the opportunity to do when we just performed it. But if you do not, do a little left-hand pits for this E. But I would say that that's sort of a backup option. If you can lift the bow and do a right-hand pitch, it's going to sound better. All right, let's move ahead a little bit to this lovely exuberant line a little bit before figure 8. I'm mainly bringing this up because I want to provide you with what I at least believe to be a good fingering. So I start on 1 on the low D, and I shift up to 3, 1, 3, 2, 2, 1, crossover, 4, 3, 1, 4, 3, 1. And make sure to vibrate whenever you can here. Now, right after these, we have these 16ths. These require similar technique to what I was talking about here. So, relatively little bow, especially here, because we need to be able to change on these staccato 16ths. And if we use too much bow, it's not going to work. So keep it dense, compact, and with great finger articulation. And I start on 1 and then go up to 3. So 1, 4, 2, 2, 3, 1, 4, 4. And then the next passage where these happen, 1, 4, 2, 2, 0, 1, 4, 4. All right, after figure 10, these octave D sharps are tough. Now, for those of you who have larger hands than mine, you may be able to get away with pretty easily just holding onto a 1-4 position. But see, that's starting off really out of tune for me because my hand is just not big enough to reliably reach it. It's deeply uncomfortable. So here's the alternative that I like to do. Starting on 1, and then go to 2, and then shift to 3 on the D string, and then plop thumb down for the octave. It's the most reliable way I've found to make it work. Now let me give you all a fingering at the end of this page with this A-flat major stuff. For me at least, the way my hand works, I find this works best with a little bit of crawling. So 4-1, tuck 4 under, and then another 4-1, shift on 1, 1-4, 1, shift up to 2, then 1-4 in position, and then 4-1 after a shift, and then one more shift to 4. This is all in position, and then this, starting on 4 again, is all in position. Now, last thing I want to mention in this movement is after figure 13, these shagadagadagas, I've been tempted to sort of be a bit too vertical on them, and I want to warn y'all against that, because you know, a phrasing like that, you really do feel like you're sort of jamming out with the music, but it still needs to have a shape. There's a forzando on the very first one of these, but after that, I think it may be appropriate to drop down just a little bit and then maybe even make a little crescendo through the whole thing so that you're not accenting every bar or every half bar. So that's all I have for you on the first movement. These are just sort of the spots that stuck out to me that may need a little bit of extra TLC or that may be frequently questioned by people who are playing this. However, again, I know there are going to be more questions that arise. Comments section, and that goes for every movement. For now, though, let's go on to the legendary second movement. All right, let's hit the second movement. This is probably the most famous part of the piece. It's got that classic English horn melody that so many people know. Etc. But there are some pretty good cello moments too. One sort of thesis that I want to talk about with regard to this movement is a lot of it is pianissimo or triple P, and it's very easy to get very tense. Oh, I better put on my mute because this is concertino. It's very easy to get very tense in this movement, especially if you're trying to control that sound too much. So for example, at the very beginning, sounds okay, but it feels terrible. So here's what I recommend. A little bit more bow than I was just using, relatively close to the fingerboard, quasi sul tasto, and tilted, so only using part of the hair. See, this lets you get something gentle and deeply fluffy without sacrificing your physical comfort. So with that general point out of the way, let's take a look at figure number 1 here. Another big concept that is important in many cases, including right here, is the concept of a fortissimo left hand in the context of a pianissimo right hand. Now that doesn't mean we want to be just smacking around the cello. That is not what I mean. What I do mean is that we need to keep good finger articulation with the left hand and confidence. So right here at figure 1, if I have a quote-unquote pianissimo left hand, I think it's going to sound pretty muddy. Yeah, so number 1, it wasn't in tune, and number 2, it was ill-defined. So if I keep that pianissimo with the bow, but I'm a bit more emphatic with the left hand, that lets me get what I need. Now on to the passage that comes immediately after this for us. We need to get this D flat, and you're probably going to want to play it on the D string. The good news is right before this there's some loudness that you'll hear, I forget exactly which instruments, but you'll hear some loudness and some D flats that'll allow you to just give a quick pluck without anybody noticing and find that note. And I recommend doing it with first finger, and just like the very beginning of the first movement, if you're doing it on the D string, stabilized with the thumb so that you're not just hanging off and kind of teetering. So, here's what I do. 1, 3, 3, and then I shift back to 3, 1, 2, 1, 3, 2, 1, 3, shift back up to 1 gently, and then I do the same thing, etc. Sorry, I'm speeding up here just to skip that. Same here, and then I put 3 down. 1, 3, 2, 4, 1, 4, 1, 3, 1. And for me, that's the sort of most idiomatic way to get at this on the instrument. Another big thing though here, make sure that you don't have just this immutable claw. This is a scary place for sure, and it's very easy to really tense up and just sort of become locked in your hand position. But the fact of the matter is, nobody's perfect, and therefore nobody's going to hit every note bang on in tune immediately. And therefore we need the ability to adjust on the fly and essentially immediately based upon what we're hearing around us and from our own instrument. So if you don't have your hand loose enough to accommodate that, you're going to be in a tough spot. So really, keep your fingers as loose and pliable as possible. All right, let's move on to figure 2. This is a kind of awkward spot. This, it gives me kind of Verdi Requiem vibes. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. The point is, a couple of suggestions for this. First of all, a musical suggestion. Really indulge in that crescendo. Whatever bowing you're doing, don't be afraid to sing out at the top there. The other thing is, you'll see in my part that it's technically written as a forte and then a subito piano is implied at the beginning of the next line. I don't believe that's correct. That's not how it was in the edition we used, and it's definitely not how we did it. There should probably be a significant diminuendo on the way down this scale. And I just realized that I miswrote a fingering here. Let me fix that. This is one of my favorite ways to manage crossing over with a fifth, actually, is to replace the finger with something different. If I'm doing it just with ones, I have to either bar or hop, neither of which are particularly convenient or feel very good. So I just tuck 2 in there. So 3, 2, 2, 4, 1, 4, 1, 2, 2. And then this shift here, when I demonstrated it a moment ago, I did it super fast and super abruptly, just as I was sort of feeling my way through this passage. Don't do it like that. Give it time. And really prepare it from the arm. And like before, keep your hand as loose as possible, because especially with downshifting, you're probably going to have to adjust something at some points. For example, I hit that flat, and I have to bring it a little bit sharper. So the point is, keep it loose and don't allow yourself to lock into a claw for any of this stuff. All right, at the meno here, this part is marked tremolo. The part I used for last night's concert was not, actually. And so this is another place where you're going to want to inquire, because it could be tremolo. But it also could be measured. But here's the thing. If it's measured as it's written, which would technically be subdividing into 30-second notes, it would, I think, be too slow for the character. So if you want to do it somewhat measured, think about doubling the speed of the notes. But either way, check with whoever is in charge of this interpretation if it's not you. And bow-wise, this is almost certainly going to be best done in the upper half. Now, once we've gotten through a bunch of very sad C-sharp minor, we come to this C-sharp major, which is going to turn into the enharmonic D-flat major to end the movement. And I was toying around with different fingerings for this part after figure 4. I settled on this: 1, 2, 4, 1, 4, 2, 4, 1, 2, 1, 4, 2, 4, 1, 2, 1, 4, and then everything else on the G string, 4, 3, 1, 3, hop back to 1. But one other thing you could try if you're feeling a little bit plucky is starting on 1, but being in thumb position with your thumb resting on the D sharp. Then you can be completely in position the whole time. 2 drawbacks. Number 1, it's a little bit sketchy to get there from, especially without having a pretty large break in between. Number 2, the string crossings here if you're doing this bowing at least, feel very odd on this up bow. So it's an option, but it didn't end up being my preferred option. Now, if you're the principal, you have a delightful little solo here. Some important things here. Number one, I think it should be very sweetly played. I think plenty of vib, even though it's an understated, quiet thing. It's very tender, very dolce, I think. The other thing is you want to find a good balance of what projects into the hall, but also what is still pianissimo, what blends well with your colleagues. Because it's not just you, I think it's a quartet. Concertmaster, principal second, principal viola, and principal cello. I would need to double check that, but it's something along those lines. And if I were the principal, the way that I would probably play it is to get the pianissimo by not using too much bow, but to have a decent core to the sound and a little bit of density in there, and still some weight from the arm. And finally, this last little passage. Couple of options here fingering wise. The one I just did is the one that I like best for my own hand and what I did last night, which is I go up to 3 on the D string here, cross over, end on this A flat on a 3, and then shift up to a 2 for the D flat. But one thing you could try as well is to go up to 1 on the D flat, and then you're done shifting for the rest of the movement. So 1, 3, 1, 3. The choice is yours. But for now, let's hit the third movement. Third movement is another great well, first thing to remember for the third movement, take that mute off. Oops. Anyway, other things for the third movement. First of all, this is a really big from the string one because there are a lot of very sporadic or seemingly sudden entrances. Ba-da-dum, ba-da-dum, ba-da-dum. If we're too far away from the string, then entrances like that one are going to be really dangerous. I stay really close to the string for this whole movement. I mean, in general, for my orchestral career overall, I do that. But it's a particularly important thing to keep in mind here. Even after this 10-bar rest, being right on the string and ready to pull with the principal. Even these short things, don't leave the string too much if you bounce at all. Okay, let's check out this poco sostenuto section. First thing to realize, poco sostenuto usually you think of as referring to sound. You know, something that's relatively sustained. But in this case, it actually refers to tempo, and it's essentially his way of saying poco meno mosso. The other thing to note is that usually this poco sostenuto will start a little bit before it's printed here. This whole area of the movement is sort of a minefield ensemble-wise, so make sure that your eyes are particularly keen for this. Especially, you know, you might have little writs before these upbeats, time taken. The other thing to note here is the stroke. This is another one that'll probably be done in the upper half. And typically the way that I've done it is, I mean, just like it's printed, it's a long 8th note and a short 16th note. I mean, nothing super legato or sustained necessarily, but I like to think of it as, once again, very close to the string and on, and sort of a waga gesture. Waga, waga, waga. Then when we get to these forzatos, don't go too wild with them. You know, that's not that's not what he means, I'm quite sure. So more like just little bits of emphasis there. Now, when we get to this little melody here, I like to start on the D string, but I find this, even though it works, it's not super comfy for my hand, so I switch to a 3 on A, and then I go back up to 1, 4, 4, 2, 4, 2, 1, and then 4, 2, 4, 1, 4, 2, 4, 1. So in context, now, after these running quarter notes, couple things to note with these dotted halves. First of all, the first 3 have accents, but the subsequent ones do not. Second of all, the ones that have accents are within piano. Even though there's a forzato one, it shouldn't be too loud yet. So, just sort of stirring, waking up a little bit. And then legato crescendo. And fingering wise, what I do here is I hit the F natural on 2, then 3 for the F sharp. I pop over to 1 for the F sharp an octave higher, then 2 on the G, and then I just go up with these octaves in thumb position. So 2, 3 thumb, 3, 3 thumb, 3, 3 thumb, 3, 3 thumb, and then I replace the thumb with 1. Now, another thing I want to mention, after this coda sign, we see these 7 bars of rest, and then we have this. Number 1, as per usual, be from the string. But number 2, with this and plenty of other passages in this piece, not just in the third movement, it is very important to realize where you as a cellist fit in. That is, you're going to hear other people in the orchestra first going yada-da-ba, and you need to make sure you don't fall into the trap of joining them when it's not your turn. Let's visit the triplets after figure 5 now, shall we? These are tough because, number 1, they can get quite fast depending on the tempo of the interpretation you're doing. But also, it's very tempting to try too hard, and let me explain what I mean by that. Like, what I just did was technically correct, but it sounds mechanical, it doesn't sound gestural, it's not in the character. So what I think is actually called for here is something more subdued and a little bit blurrier. And again, depending on tempo, that can become very difficult because you're going to probably be tempted to try and really control that. So here's what I recommend doing, is practicing them hands separately. So getting the left hand first, and then getting that sort of vowel-y in the right hand. And then you can put them together. And like a lot of the other stuff in this movement, probably best done in the upper half of the bow. Now after figure 6 here at the end of that line, We finish that up and we go back to the beginning of the movement. But we will almost certainly not take the first repeat this time around. Instead, we will continue on, and at the coda sign, we will jump down to the coda here. This will likely be tremolo, but it's another spot where you want to ask, because technically it could be 16ths. After the triple forte here towards the end, we have these don't be, kind of like up here, don't be tempted into too much distinction between the notes. This is another sort of musical cloud. Maybe not at the beginning because it's triple forte, but especially after the dim. Fluffy. And from the string. Now, 7 bars of rest. Your job is to memorize this final chord. It's E minor, root position, starting on the C string. You'll likely play at unison, I can't guarantee that, but the important thing is that a lot of times this goes attacca. That is, play this chord and right into jaws, or sorry, the fourth movement. And so if you memorize that chord, you can do the page turn within those 7 bars of rest and be ready to go as soon as the fourth movement starts. Speaking of the fourth movement, let's give it a whirl. First thing to mention, this gesture here is not necessarily the most difficult thing in this piece on its own, but it can throw you into a trap because other people in the orchestra have similar notes, but not in the same rhythm. So it's important to stand your ground with your section and make sure that you don't get sucked into, say, the viola's rhythm. But other than that, the beginning is relatively straightforward compared to other parts of the piece. Let's talk fingerings down here in the fortissimo, though. After this E, I like to sort of live in a fourth position home base, more or less, with little stretches back when I need to be like that. But also, it's, again, kind of like that part in the first movement. Where you want to be relatively close to the bridge, have nice compact bow and good finger articulation so that every note pops. Etc. All right, right before figure 3, couple things to be careful of. Number 1, finger articulation, especially under this slur. If you try to do it without, like many things before in this piece, it's going to become quite cloudy and muddy. So, the other thing is keep your eye on the conductor and your principal, and keep your ears open too. This needs to be as together as possible with the bassoon. Plus, there will very likely be a little bit of a rit before figure 3, so keep your eye on that too. Now, right after, this is another spot where I like to do that 5th finger replacement. So I go 0-4-1, 4, 1-4, 0-4-2, and then again. And the next one I start on first finger. 1-4, and I replace with 3. So just a couple of little fingering suggestions in that area for your practicing pleasure. All right, now kind of like in the coda of the third movement, this that cloud that I was talking about, we have yet another cloud here. And I think, you know, as much as I've been yammering about finger articulation in this video, this is one of those spots where you want to kind of cool it on that. In fact, I think a wishy-washy watercolor kind of feel is more suited for this passage. A little more clarity on that forzando, but other than that, really not much bow, and especially if you go to cross strings here, very subtle string crossings, almost like a double stop. And here, my little trick is to go from the open strings to a harmonic, and then back to 1. But really just keeping it hazy and subtle and subdued and all those things. Now just quickly, this triplet run after figure 6. That is the fingering that I like to use. It is yours if you would like it. 1, 3, 4, 1, 3, 4, 1, 2, 4, 1, 1, 3, 4, 1. There's another spot, by the way. Don't come in before you're supposed to. You have to wait for the others. And then, from the string, them first, then you, and again from the string, etc., etc., etc. After this, things are more straightforward for a while. We've already covered a lot of the pitfalls of this movement, but I will show you a suggested fingering on the line before figure 10. So I do 1, 1, 3, 4, and then 4, and just cross over 4, 1, 4, 1, 4, 2, and then 1, 3, 1, 4, 1, 4, 1, 3, 1, and then here 1, 4, 1, 4, 1, 4, 1, 4, 2, 4, 1, and I start this un poco sostenuto at figure 10 in the upper half on first finger, and I just cross over that way with just 16th. This is not tremolo, and I can almost guarantee you that it will not be asked for as tremolo in a rehearsal from you. Nice big swells, but otherwise very coy and gentle and in the background. After 11, these triplets, you can either do 4, 3, 1, 1, 4, 1, and that's a very good option that is nice to avoid an open string, but I actually just do 4, 3, 1, 3, 0, 3. And I think this is one of those spots where you can just pick which is easier for you, shifting or string crossing. And in my case, for this passage, I preferred the string crossing. After this, you'll want to check on some 16th versus tremolo things. And then eventually you arrive in this triple forte. I just do 1, 4, 1, but there are some people who do thumb as well, thumb to thumb, and that is an option for you as well. It's harder for me in that position than 1, 4, 1, so I stick with 1, 4, 1, but again, I'm all about giving y'all options. All right, so that's New World Symphony. Again, there's plenty of stuff that we haven't covered, but that's what the comments section is for. I mean, obviously, if you come in there and say, hey, Ben, can you give me fingerings for the entire piece? No, because that takes forever. But if you come in and say something like, hey, what's going on with figure 37 in the 12th movement? I can't figure out what bowing I should do or where should I play it or whatever. I will be so glad to help you with that. But otherwise, I want to thank you so much for joining me today. If you haven't already, I would love if you'd be willing to hit the like and subscribe buttons. It really helps me out and kind of makes my day too. And I also want to let you know that the Cello Ben studio is open. I'm offering lessons via Zoom to cellists of all levels all around the globe. Just send me an email at mail@celloben.com and we can get a 30-minute free trial lesson on the books for you. Or if self-paced learning is more your vibe and you're an adult who wants to start cello, even if you've never played a musical instrument before, head over to celloben.com/course where you can get access to my online course on Udemy. It covers everything you need to know to get started, plus it includes access to me for answers to whatever questions you may have. And with that, I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. Thank you again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.